Hello there, and welcome back to my channel for another new video. About a month ago, I did a video called The Woman Who Fell to Earth 1 Year On, and it seemed to go down fairly well. So I thought I'd kind of repeat that formula, but with a different story, and quite a longer number of years, a longer gap. This is The Waters of Mars, which is 10 years old this month at the time of recording this, which is pretty mad really, because this was from my childhood, I'd just become a fan at this point. I've got vivid memories of the story, watching it for the first time and many times since in the intervening years. It's one of my favourites of all time, really, I think. I've often said that, and I've just recently gone back to revisit it for this as well. So without further ado, just going back to, November 2009, or even a few months earlier, the first kind of thing I remember about this story, the first glimpse we got, the trailer showing the end of Planet of the Dead, with those shots timed with the noise of the cloister bell in the background. I vividly remember that trailer. When we saw the kind of the biodome area, the botanical garden place, I thought very briefly that was like a throwback to The Doctor's Daughter, which had aired, a few months before in 2008, and I wondered whether that was going to be a connection, but obviously that didn't turn out to be a thing at all. That was just young me having a moment. But yeah, it's such a scary episode, even from that trailer. And the episode itself, it's brilliant. The Flood are one of the scariest things Doctor Who has ever done, I think. I mean, obviously I'm biased because I was a kid at this point, so I was 9 years old when this came on for the first time. When you're a kid, you're going to be a bit more freaked out by things in Doctor Who or TV or film or whatever. We have had stuff since, like, for instance, The Foretold in Series 8, I think is a really kind of freaky, gruesome thing, but not something I was so much scared by because I was a bit older than when I was watching it. But I think young kids would have been really quite scared of that. So I think it is a matter of perspective. But from my perspective, at 9 years old, this was the scariest thing I had seen on Doctor Who, and I don't think it's been matched since, really. The Flood just are the most freaky, horrible monster. I think the whole thing about water and how you can just be infected by one drop, it just makes you shivers go down your spine. It's a really, really horrible sort of concept. They look horrible as well, and the way they're shot. There's a jump cut when we first see their face. I think it's Andy who's been infected, and he turns around and we just get this short little glimpse of it, and it's like something from a horror film. There's that bit where Andy's infecting Tarek. I think they're the character names. I think I've got that right there. And Andy is standing up, and then Tarek's kind of like kneeling down, and Andy's like kind of feeding him the water, almost infecting him. I've just finished reading Dracula for the first time, and it's very similar to a moment in Dracula where Count Dracula is standing up and he's forcing Mina, the female character in the novel, to suck his blood. Like, it's the very similar idea of being infected. There's something quite vampire-y about the whole concept of the Flood, I think, like this kind of parasites sort of thing, and this whole idea of infection. It's very, very horrible. One thing I do think is when they start running the Flood, kind of loses a bit of credibility there. But hey, that's just a minor quibble, really. So going back to the episode now, 10 years on, obviously, as I say, I've watched it many times in the years since. The most recent time on the recently released Specials Blu-ray Steelbook that was released just a month or so ago. So it was nice to see it in crisp HD on that. I still really like this story. I still think the Flood are great. I do think perhaps the Flood are overshadowed a bit by the rest of the story, because the story is designed ultimately to get the 10th Doctor to a point where he's breaking the laws of time. That's basically what it's all about. So from the very start, he arrives there on Volcano Day, and it's like, okay, there's a disaster, and he's trying to resist the urge to stay and to change time, to help these people. It's a dilemma we get all the time in Doctor Who, comparing it back to Fires of Pompeii, where he decided, Donna made him decide to save just one family from that. More recent things like with the Shilda, where the 12th Doctor decided to save one person. Obviously that has ramifications. So quite often in Doctor Who, when the Doctor does change time, there are ramifications. Obviously there are times as well when that's just kind of brushed under the carpet and there aren't any implications at all, and it's just like, oh, okay, I'm going to change time, and it's all going to be fine, and there's perhaps a slight kind of contradiction there. But for the purpose of this story, it works. It works fine, definitely. I did feel watching it this time that the Flood kind of, they're there to be the threat, you know, they're there to be this unstoppable threat. That's all they need to be, really, because it has to get to a point where the base has to be blown up. There's no other way of destroying them apart from blowing up the base. So they're just there as like the nightmarish creature, the parasite there, you know, as the threat. Maybe would have been nice to see that developed a bit more, because they just do fizzle out a bit by the end of it. They're not really important. As I say, they're not the main part of the episode, really. It's more about the 10th Doctor by the kind of the final third and his character arc, from where he's come from in Series 4, etc., and going into the end of time. So that's one minor quibble I have about it, that the Flood don't really play a bigger part. But then, I mean, they are this unstoppable monster. How else do you stop them apart from blowing them up? You can't really. I'd love to see them back, by the way. I'm not sure how they do that, because it's very difficult, I'd imagine, to create a scenario where... I mean, how could you destroy them? If they get onto Earth and infect the water, that's it. We're basically all buggered, really. But anyway, other aspects of the episode. Lindsay Duncan is great as Adelaide Brooke. The team are all great as well. I mean, some of those characters are just there to die. Well, quite a lot of them, let's face it, are just there to die, or to be turned into the Flood. But we do get nice, you know, transformation scenes, like the very first one with Tarek, as I've mentioned. One thing I noticed this time, I think I noticed it before actually, but definitely this time, is that Maggie, when she's infected, there are two shots of her in that infirmary bit, like the jail cell where she's sealed off from the rest of them, and her hair is different in those two shots, and they literally like come just after each other. I'm not sure what was going on there, really. No idea, but yeah, I just noticed that, like a little inconsistency, a little movie mistake, if you will, there. But no, lots of great transformation scenes, lots of great stuff going on in this story. Parts of it were a bit talky, I thought, going back to it this time. You know, like the whole thing with Adelaide and the Dalek. Does it really need to? Well, yeah, it sort of does need to be there, but I think if they did that today, actually, it would kind of, like, fans would go, oh, you know, it's fan service, which is interesting, I think. We had the Dalek finale just a year before, when this was broadcast in 2009, and it does tie in nicely in a way. But I think going back to it now, that moment perhaps does detract a little bit. You know, just focus on what's going on here. Don't have the callback to Series 4 and the Daleks. Yeah, it kind of establishes that Adelaide's death is a fixed point in time. We get it. But I did kind of feel, yeah, there are bits that are a bit talky, perhaps, which is not so great, perhaps. But no, I don't want to complain about this story at all. It's a great story, regardless of all these things I mentioned. They're just things I noticed going back to it. But I think it does really still hold up, you know, going back to 10 years on. I can hardly believe that it's been 10 years since this story aired, as I say, because it's something from my childhood, and I vividly remember watching it at the time. So I guess that's a kind of good place to draw this to a close, really. I mean, did you watch this back in 2009? What are your thoughts of this story and memories of watching it when you first watched it? And of all the different aspects I've mentioned, like the Flood, you know, do you agree that the most terrifying thing ever in Doctor Who, or am I wrong? Is there something more terrifying? You know, do let me know in the comments, and we'll settle it out and have a debate and all the rest of it. Maybe give me some suggestions if there are other anniversaries coming up, other stories I should cover in this little kind of mini-series thing I've got going now with, you know, XYZ story, however many years on, you know, because it's quite a nice format, and I think just to think back and look back at stories that I watched when they were broadcast and just kind of reconsider them now in a more modern context, perhaps, or just, it's an excuse to revisit great stories like The Waters of Mars, because, yeah, it's a great story. I've never really done a video about it on its own before. So, thank you for watching once again, and subscribe if you haven't already, please, and I will see you soon for some more Doctor Who videos. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye for now.